Hello guys, welcome back. In this Jetpack Compose tutorial, we are going to learn about Jetpack Compose navigation. We will navigate between composables only with no fragments and how to pass arguments between composables. So without further ado, let's get started. So before we start, we should add the dependence for the navigation component for these composables. So we can navigate here to this build.gradle and we are going to paste inside here this implementation, and I'm going to link the documentation down below so that you can go and copy this. So let's just sync here our build project and we can start. So now we can collapse this and create here a new file. So we are going to create here our screens so that we can navigate between these screens. So we are going to call these screens. So inside here we are going to create composables. And this composable we are going to call this screen A. And inside this screen A here, we are going to create a surface. And we can change the color this so that we can differentiate them. We can start with the red here. So we can try to fix the max size. Now inside here, we are going to use a box. Inside this box here, we are going to have a text, a simple text just here. So we are going to call this. And inside here, we should create a button that is going to aid us for navigation. So now we are done here by creating these screens. So we can try here and duplicate these screens so that we can navigate between different screens. So this one we are going to call this screen C. And also we can change here a color to green. So now we are done here creating our screens. So we can start here navigating between these screens. So we can go here to this main activity, and inside here now we can start to navigate. And in order to navigate, we have to create a navigation controller. So this is just like a steering wheel. So in order to navigate between one screen to another screen, this navigation controller is going to bring up those routes, and it can specify that the direction which they are going, and they are going to add this to the back stack, and also it understands the state of this composable or of each screen. So in order to create this, we have to create at the hierarchy where any other composables which want it can easily access it. And this is just a principle of state hosting, where the states lies above the composables where other composables can easily access it. And the grid candidate for this, we are going to make it inside this compose navigation theme. So we can create here, and it's just easily. So we are going to create here navigation host. So we are going to create this navigation controller, and we can use the remember navigation controller. So we are going to remember this navigation controller. And inside here, we can now create our navigation host. So our navigation host is just like a link between the navigation controller and the navigation graph. The navigation graph contains all of the composables and their destinations. So in order to create this navigation host, first we have to define a route. And this route is just defining the destination of a certain composable. So for example, we have a screen A, we can define the route, and this route is just a string implementation so that it can give us this destination. So we can easily create any constant. So for example, here easily we can create this by using the object. So we are going to create outside here the object, and this object we are going to call it navigation route. And inside here we are going to create 3 destinations. The first destination is for screen A, and it's just a normal string. So for example, here you can define any string which you want, but for us we are going to go with the screen A. So we can define here 3 other screens, and here it's going to be screen B, and here it's going to be screen C. Now we can create our navigation host, and we can do that by creating down here. So we can create a new composable, and we can call this my navigation host. And this navigation host here must get the navigation host controller so that it can easily navigate between these fragments. So now, in order to create that, we have to create the navigation. We can use the navigation host. So the navigation host composable. So this navigation host here takes this navigation controller and the starting destination. So this applies the principles of navigation that we should have a fixed starting point. So we can define here the start destination, and here we can build our navigation graph. So if you print Control Q here, you can see that provide in places in the composable hierarchy for self-contained navigation to occur. So right now here we can provide the navigation host controller. And now here we can define the starting destination. So for us, we are going to use this NavHost, the navigation route, which we have defined above, so that we can use it. And this builder, we are going to define this inside the lambda function. So we can use this trailing lambda syntax. Now inside here, we have this navigation builder, which we can use to build our navigation graph. And in order to do that, we can use this composable function, which is going to take up the root. So as you can see, this is going to add the composable. It's going to add the composable to the navigation graph builder so that we can create a navigation. It takes up a root, which is the string, the arguments which we want to, as a list of these named arguments. And also we can pass in deep links and the composables. So inside here, for example, now we can create our composable. So we have to define first our root. And here our root, we can use the navigation route and define our route. For example, here we want to navigate it to screen A. Now, right now we are not going to pass in arguments, so we are going to see this later. So now we can pass in the content. So inside here now we can call the composables. And for example, for our case here, we have created the screen composables. So we are going to pass in here screen A. Now, in order to navigate, we have to use this navigation controller in order to link up the button, so that when we press the button, we are going to navigate to screen B. And right now we have not created that implementation. And it is suggested that we use this navigation host controller and not creating here multiple instances of this controller in every composable. So we can create this by using the callbacks. So we can go here and specify the event. For example, here inside the screen, we can provide here a callback on navigation. And this navigation is going to, the type is going to be and return a unit. So right now, when this button is clicked, we want to navigate. So we can call this on navigation so that we can navigate. Now we can try to change all of these screens here. So now after refactoring these codes here, we can try now to navigate to other screens. Now inside this here, we can pass in here the navigation host. So we can use the trailing lambda syntax because we have only the lambda function as our parameter. Now inside here, we can use the navigation controller to navigate to another composable, and this is just easily. So when we use this navigation host controller, and we can navigate now to the second screen, and inside here now we can define the route, and we can use that nav route which we have defined above there to navigate to a screen B. So right now here we can easily navigate to this second screen. So now let's create also other composables. So we can try to duplicate this 3 times. So we are going to navigate, this one is going to be screen B. So we have defined that the navigation route, and here we can navigate this to screen C. And this is screen C, we can try to navigate to screen A. So now, as you have seen here, we are creating this composable, which is going to add this composable to the navigation graph. And after adding this route, now we can navigate using this navigation controller here to navigate. As you can see here, if you press Ctrl Q, this one is going to navigate to a route in the current navigation graph. Now, inside here, we can call this my navigation host. my navigation host and pass that nav controller. So now we can try to launch our application and see how we are going to move between these screens. So now our app is launched, but when we click this navigate, we just get the same screen. And this is because we have not changed. We have used this screen A throughout here. So we have to use here the screen B. So we have forgot just to change this. And here we have to use the screen C. And let's rerun our application and see all again. So now our app is launched, and as we click here navigate, it's going to take us to other screens. Now if we press this back button here, we're going to navigate back, but when we reach A here, we are not going to quit, and this is just going through and through because we have added multiple items inside this back stack. So these composables have been arranged in this back stack. So we have to fix this by using the navigation options. So if we jump inside here, we can try to fix this by using these navigation options. And this navigate controller has a function that is going to provide us with navigation options builders, which we can use to build these options in order to specify. And if you know you have been used that the XML style, we have a popUpTo function which is going to remove all of those composables which have been added inside this back stack. So for example, if we have a login UI that a user has logged in from the login flow inside to the dashboard flow now, so we don't want that if a user clicks that the dashboard flow to go back to that login flow, and because the user has already been logged in, and we can use that by using the popUpTo, and this one is going to limit us. So it's going to pop off all of those composables which have been added inside the back stack. As you can see here, it's going to pop to a given destination before navigating. So it's going to pop all non-matching destination from the back stack until this destination is found. So inside here now, we can provide the ID if we are using fragments also with composables, but right now we are just using composables. We can specify a route, and as here our route, we don't want that to navigate from screen A back to screen C, and we can do that by using by providing here the navigation route. So we don't want here, and also by default this one is going to include this screen A, so we don't want to include also this. So we want that if a user is at screen A and press a backstack, is going to go back and quit the application. And inside here now we can specify another variable which is called inclusive, and this inclusive is a boolean function. So we can specify, for example, by default it is false, so it's going to include also. So we are setting this to true. And now let's try and rerun our application and see the output. So now let's press this navigate button here multiple times, and let's press this back button. As you can see here, we are navigating between these screens, and if we reach this screen A and press the back button, we are going to quit the application, and because we have removed all of those composable inside the back stack. Now in order to pass in arguments, we have been navigating without arguments, and in most cases we are going to need to pass in arguments. So let's see how we can pass argument from one composable to another composable. Now in order to navigate from one composable to another composable with the arguments, we have to specify the argument inside the root, and this works similar to just how deep links works. So if you understand deep links in the XML style, it's just similar. So for demonstration purpose, we are going to create here another variable which we are going to call this root with arguments. And now inside here, we can use a string template to access our navigation route. So we're going to use the screen B. So we have to specify here a placeholder, and this placeholder here is going to contain our key. So this key, we are going to call this argument. So we are going to replace this argument here with those strings which we want to pass it. And we have to modify that the navigation graph to understand that we have another navigation route. So we are going to call this route with arguments. So right now the navigation graph understands that there is a route which contains this argument here. And now in order to navigate right now here, we can just create the route and place in the argument which we want to pass. And now inside here, now we can place our text which we want to pass. So for now, we can just specify Hakuna Matata. And now, in order to access this argument which we have passed inside here, now if we come to this composable here and press Ctrl Q, you can see we have this argument parameter here which contains a list, and this list takes in the named nav arguments. So we can just specify here. So as you can see here, this is going to take up the arguments. So let's pass in here arguments. And this one is going to take a list of arguments. So we're going to create here a list of. So we can define here multiple arguments which we can define inside here. So we are going to use a list of arguments. So inside here, we are going to call the nav arguments function, which takes up the string and the navigation argument builder. So this string, which is called the name, is like a key. So which we have specified inside here, we are going to specify it inside here. So we have to pass in here argument, and now we have this string builder. Now in order to access this variable here, we have to use this navigation backstack entry, and we can try to rename this and call it nav entry. So now we can modify this screen B in order to take up that parameter. So we are going to provide here a string, and this string can be null. So we are going to press here a null check, and we are coming here inside and we're getting an error. So we can use this screen inside here. So now we can use that nav entry in order to retrieve that string which we have been creating. And right now we are going to use this argument, and we can use this get string, and we can specify now the key which we have been defining there, which is argument. And now that string can be used inside this screen B here. So you can see now we can use that string. Now let's try and rerun our application and see the output. So let's press here navigate. As now you can see we have passed this argument here, Hakuna Matata. And now we want to also pass in other variables. Now we have been creating just a string, and there is just a way, for example, you can pass in a boolean. So let's create here another text that can be displayed if this is going to be true. So now let's jump inside here this screen C here so that we can create another variable. So we are just going to call this visible, and this is going to be of type boolean, and we are adding a safe call because this object can be null. And we are going to add here if statement that if this one is going to be visible, we want to show this text, else we are going to show another text. And now we are done with this screen C. Let's jump inside main activity here in this screen C. Now we want to create another root with that argument. So we can come here where we have specified this another root and create another variable. And this one variable is going to be screen C. And now we have to change this also to include that screen C. And we can change this argument name here to be visible. And now inside here, we want to navigate that from this screen B, we want to navigate to screen C with a certain argument. So now we can just copy this here, and inside this, we can use a string template and paste in here our navigation route. And also we can specify now that we want this to be false. And now inside here, our screen also, we have to modify to use that route which we have specified here. So we are going to use this route with argument C, and inside here now we have to access that navigation backstack entry. So we are just going to use this it reference, and we are going to get arguments, and right now we can use get boolean, and then we are going to specify here which is going to be visible, the key. And also inside here we have to specify that this is going to have arguments. And now this one is going to take up a list of arguments. And inside here, we can specify the key, which is going to be visible. And now inside here, we have this navigation builder, this nav argument builder. So inside here, we have a parameter which is called type. So here now we can specify the type which is going to be converted to this, and we have a boolean type. And for the list of data types which are accepted here, you can just go to the documentation and see. So right now here we are passing this argument. Let's try and run our application and see the output. Now let's press this navigate button here. As you can see now, it's displaying this Hakuna Matata. So guys, this was the way which you can use to pass argument inside these composables. So if you find this video helpful, please don't forget to provide a like and subscribe for more videos. You can check these other videos here. See you there. Thank you.